All right, here I am again, my dear students, that you are safe and healthy. Today we are going to talk about one of the most important system that is very important for our health, to take care of the system, to clean it, to make sure that it is functioning correctly, which is the digestive system. So let's get started. The main function of the digestive system is, of course, it's taking food, breaking down nutrient molecules, absorbs the molecule into the bloodstream, and get rid of any indigestible remains. The organs of the digestive system fell into two groups. So, let me tell you some things about the digestive system, alimentary canals. We call it also gastrointestinal tract or GAT. It's a continuous muscular tube that is run from the mouth to the anus, that like a canal. You go from the mouth, the top, to the bottom. And we call it also GI tract or gut. G-U-T, gut. G for George, U-T, all right? Digest food, break down into smaller fragments, those are food, absorbs fragment through lining into the blood, and their organs are the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, small and large intestine. The accessory glands are the teeth, the tongue, the gallbladder, these little green structures over here, and also some other digestive glands that they are also accessory glands, but they produce secretion that help break down a food stuff. Salivary gland, the pancreas, this little yellowish tinkish here over here, and the liver. All right. Before we go any further, I want you to get familiar with those motility characteristic that this digestive organs do. One of it's the peristalsis, and the other one is segmentation. Peristalsis is help to propose the chyme from the mouth, right? And it involves alternating wave of contractions and relaxation. The food is moved distally along the tract. And this is because those organs on this canal or the GI can contract and relax. And while they are contracting and relaxing, they propose this they move distally this food. We call it decaying because some mixation can happen over here, so we don't call it food anymore, but we give it the name of cane. Segmentation, however, it's happen in the intestine. Once in the intestine, the segmentations is the food is moved forward then backward. And not only it mixes the food with the digestive juices in the intestine, that's allow it to break it down more further. And that's happened because also this intestinal tissues can contract and relax, but the movement of the food, it's called segmentation, because this is non-adjacent segment of the alimentary, is not going distally one direction, is going backward, forward, backward, forward. Okay, and this is once it's mixed with the juice of the intestine, he will allow it to break it down mechanically more. What are the gastrointestinal tract activities? Ingestions, which is eating, all right? Mechanical breakdown, which is including chewing, mixing food with saliva, and you know saliva have enzymes, churning food in the stomach. And some segmentations, motility happen here because it will break it more mechanically. Propulsions, which is movement of the food through the alimentary channel, which include the swallowing, and the peristalsis movement, which is the distal movement, which means propulsions of the food that involve alternating wave of contractions and relaxation. Which is seen here, you see in the different color, which here the green, that's the propulsions. It happened all along the gastrointestinal tract, from the mouth to the anus. The ingestions, of course, happen only at this level, okay? Mechanical breakdown, the stomach, and in the intestine. There are no mechanical breakdown over here once you reach the anus. Digestions, they have digestion. This time it's not mechanical, it's really chemical. It's involve a lot of enzymes, the 35 catabolic steps that involve enzymes, break down complex food molecule into chemical building block like amino acid or whatever our cells need, our body needs. Absorptions is the passage of the digest fragment. And what is the digest fragment this time? They are organic substrate, electrolyte, vitamins, and water from the lumen of the GI tract into the blood or the lymph. Either in the blood or in the lymph, absorptions. What is seen here brown, this is the defecation, which is elimination of whatever is not digested by our body. And it's eliminated in form of feces. Okay? The secretion of digestive enzyme and motility depend on the chyme content. In another word, depend on which enzyme, which food are you eating. And also it's under the control of the nerve system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve system, and hormones, especially the CCK, cholecystokinin, that is secreted by the duodenum and jejunum. The CCK stimulate contractions of the gallbladder, increase the pancreatic enzyme and the bicarbonate secretions, increase the growth of the exocrine part of the pancreas. All right, and let's talk about the histology of alimentary canal, the GI. All the digestive organs have the same 4 basic tinic layers: the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis externa, and the serosa. The mucosa is the tinic layer that lines the lumen, right? It's the mucosa. We call it mucosa because it secretes mucus. Digestive enzymes and hormones absorbs and products it absorbs the end products of the digestions and produce a defense against infectious disease. It's made of 3 sublayers: the epithelium, that you are seeing here, pale pink, lamina propria, that's the lumen. And the muscularis mucosa. Epithelium, lamina propria, muscularis mucosa. All of them, they perform either one function or all of those 3 functions, which is secreting mucus, digestive enzyme and hormones, absorb the end product of digestions, and protect against infectious disease. They can produce all the 3 functions or one of them. They can perform those. So the epithelium This epithelium it's a simple columnar epithelium and a mucus secreting cells in the most GI, gastrointestinal tract, except the mouth, the esophagus, and the anus. They are lined up with the stratified squamous epithelium. So the epithelium is columnar, simple columnar, and mucus secreting cells. You have those glands that secrete those mucus, except in the mouth, esophagus, anus. There, the epithelium is a stratified squamous epithelium. So the epithelium secretes mucus, and the mucus protect digestive organ from enzymes to not get erosion from or catalyzed or by the certain enzyme. And also this mucus facilitate the food passage. Some mucus, particularly in the stomach, I believe also small intestine, they may secrete enzymes and hormones. The lamina propria, as you can see here, they have some mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. They are made of it's a connective tissue, the lamina propria. It's a loose connective tissue, areolar connective tissue. It's very rich on capillaries, rich supply of capillaries. Which is needed for nourishment and absorptions. And also contain, as I said, those green stuff over here, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue that help defend against the microorganism. The muscularis mucosa produce local or help local movement of the entire mucosa. Okay. Now we go to the submucosa. This guy over here, and you see it. It consists also of connective tissue. It's areolar connective tissue, contain blood, lymphatic vessels, lymphoid follicles, nerves, plexus, and those blood and nerves, and this supply the GI tract, the surrounding GI tract. and they have a lot of abundant amount of elastic tissue that help the organ to regain the shape after swallowing a large meal. And they said that they have some nerve plexus in the submucosa. This plexus is called the submucosal nerve plexus or Meissner plexus. Those yellow, that's nerves. Green for lymphatic vessels, red and blue for blood vessels. And those supply the entire surrounding organs. And this is why the secretions and motility, it's under direct control of the enteric nerve system because of those presence of those nerve plexus. We're going to see another nerve plexus, which is the enteric nerve plexus. Or the oblique nerve plexus. This one is found between the longitudinal and the circular layer of the muscularis externa. I am coming to this one right now. Muscularis externa is a muscle layer that is responsible for segmentation and peristalsis, both. So he do the propulsions distally, and he do back and forward movement of the bowl of the food, we call it chyme. It contains two layers of muscles. We have the circular layer and we have the longitudinal layer of muscles. The circular muscles in some area, become thickened. They thickens in some area to form sphincters. Then the last layer that we have, remember we have four mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, then the serosa. Serosa is the outermost layer, which is made of visceral peritherium, right? Areolar connective tissue again, covered by the epithelium, it's the mesothelium, which is single layer of squamous epithelium in most organs. It's so funny, we call it serosa here, but in the esophagus, we don't call it serosa, we call it adventitia. And it's not areolar connective tissue, it's adventia, it's actually dense connective tissue that hold the esophagus in the surrounding, hold it in place. And they have also some organs that have both. They can have adventia and the serosa. We call that retroperitoneal organs, retroperitoneal organs. So the blood supply for this GI tract is by what we call splanchnic circulation that include arteries and the branch of aorta to serve digestive organ. We have, if you remember, we have the hepatic, the splenic, the left gastric artery, the inferior and superior mesenteric arteries, and that's the splanchnic circulations. We do have the hepatic circulations, portal circulation that drain blood rich in nutrients from the digestive organ before to deliver it. Then he deliver it to the liver for processing. Then after that, he go into the circulations. All right. The histology of some of our GI tract, small intestine, jejunum. And you see here that the nerve plexus or back plexus that exists between the inner circular muscles and the outer longitudinal muscles. We have the serosa, which is Low's connective tissue, areolar connective tissue, and this teeny layers over here. This is the mesothelium, which is a squamous, simple squamous epithelium. Again, serosa, muscularis externa, with both inner and circular and longitudinal, submucosa, right? And we have those projections that we call villosity. So if you look at those velocity, you see them more in the small intestine, right? Those villi. In the large intestine, you don't see those velocity, no velocity. That's the difference between small intestine and large intestine. So let's keep going. So let's start with the oral cavity. The oral cavity function, mastication, showing decrease the size of the food because of those teeth, all right, to break it down. And this is to break it down in small pieces so we can begin facilitate to begin the digestion. They lubricate food mixing with the saliva, which help more to break down those food. So we have an initial hydrolysis here. The saliva also play a role as an action of antibacterial action, especially that, if you remember, we have the hard palate and the soft palate. The soft palate close off the narrow pharynx during the swallowing. All right, so we cannot be, we're eating, and the nasopharynx during this swallowing, we close the nasopharynx, the soft palate. Uvula, it's a finger-like projections that faces downward from the free edge of the soft palate. They block the entrance for substance to nasopharynx when swallowing. Sure. All right, sorry about that. So the tooth strictures are the one that it's going to help us breaking down those food in the small pieces, all right? Is a food that is teeth. Tooth has two major regions. We have the crown that exposes above the gingiva, above the gum, all right? It's covered by the enamel, which is the hardest substance in the body. It's very mineralized with calcium salt. This is why it's very hard. And hydroxyapalate crystals. It's produced, enamel produced in cell degenerate when the tooth erupts. So no healing if the tooth decays or crack, need artificial repair by fillings. Then we have the root, and between them we have the neck, all right? And the roots, it's the portion that it's the one that is completely embedded in the jawbone, in the bone. It's connected to the crown by the neck. The canine and scissors and the premolar have only one root. The first upper premolar have two. The first upper molars have three roots. The first two lower molars have two roots. The third molar's roots vary, often single fuse roots. This tissue that is covered, the root, it's called cement. It's calcified connective tissue. It is attached to this muscles, which is the periodontal ligament. The gingiva sulcus is a groove where the gingiva border, this is the groove over here, that's the gingiva sulcus. And the dentin, it's so funny, this dentin. This is a bone-like materials, and it's under the enamel. It's maintained by endotoblasts of the pulp's cavity. We move to the salivary glands. Salivary gland functions, clean the mouth, all right? Taking bacteria, it have an antibacterial effect. Dissolve a food chemical for the taste, moistens food, and making it into bolus. At this time, we are not calling it came yet, okay? It's began breaking down, you have some enzyme. The most important one is the amylase that break down starch. When you eat a piece of bread, you always feel like it's sugary because the amylase that is in your saliva will break down those starch into sugar, into glucose. Most saliva salva produced by the salivary gland that they are extrinsic gland. They are localized outside of the oral cavity. Minor salivary glands are scattered through the oral cavity. Major salivary gland, we have the parotid gland. They are anterior to the ear and external to the masseter's muscles. We have the submandibular gland. medial to the body of the mandible. This is why we call it submandibular. And we have the sublingual gland that is anterior to the submandibular gland, and this is under the tongue. So this is why we call it sublingual. All right. And this is the histology for the salivary gland. There are two types of secretory cells in the salivary gland. We have the serous cells that produce watery. Those serous cells that they produce watery secretions, enzyme, ions, and the bite of mucin. And we have the mucous cells. Those produce mucus. Parotid and submandibular gland contain mostly serous cells, and sublingual gland consists mostly of the mucous cells. We are moving to the next organ, the pharynx. The pharynx, the food passes from the mouth into the oral pharynx and then into the laryngopharynx. So the pharynx allows passage of the food, fluid, air. He is made of stratified squamous epithelium, lining with the mucus-producing gland. The external muscle layer consists of skeletal muscle layers, longitudinal, the inner one, and the outer one is the one that is he circle the wall of the pharynx. We call it pharyngeal constrictors. We move to the esophagus. Esophagus is a flat tube that runs from the laryngopharynx into the stomach. It's collapsed, it's not involved in the food propulsions. He pierced the diaphragm at the esophagus. We don't have the legend over here, but he pierced the pharynx because he reached the stomach, right? So he pierced the diaphragm and the esophageal hiatus and joined the stomach at the cardiac orifice. And the gastroesophageal sphincter surround the cardiac orifice. And this sphincter keep the orifice closed when the food is not being swollen. And the mucus that is surrounding the sphincter protect the esophagus from acid reflux. So the esophagus propel the food into the stomach. And this sphincter that when it reached at this cardiac orifice, cardiac orifice, sorry, not cardiac, cardiac orifice, he prevents also air from entering. Not the air, sorry. He prevents from the acid reflux. We have also other sphincters. We have an upper esophageal sphincter. That prevent air from entering. It's over here. The upper sphincter relax, and this will allow the food to enter to esophagus. This area for the food passes is under what we call the peristaltic contractions. Peristaltic contraction, when the food, now we don't call it food, we call it, it's already, we are going to call it bolus. The bolus is moving distally. And this creates area of high pressure behind the bolus, and the bolus move along. It's like you are pushing it up when you create this high pressure on the bolus, behind the bolus. You create this high pressure, you push it in it down by contractions of the muscles. The upper sphincter is made of skeletal muscles. The lower sphincter that is protecting the esophagus from acid reflux is under vagal control. And once at this lower sphincter, when it's relaxed, letting the balls getting into the stomach relax, allowing the bolus to enter. Is some histology over here? So the esophagus is made of all, you have the mucosa, the stip mucosa, the muscularis, the adventia. It doesn't have serosa. It's a fibrous connective tissue, right? The epithelium is a stratified squamous epithelium, and as soon as you reach the stomach, you see how it connects to the cardia, right, by this sphincter. As soon as it is in the stomach, this epithelium is no longer squamous, stratified squamous, but it's simple columnar. The esophageal gland secrete mucus to aid in the bolus movement. And the muscularis externa, which is skeletal muscle, is mixed in the middle with smooth muscle inferiorly. So we have the muscularis externa, we have smooth and skeletal both. And of course, it doesn't have serosa, you have adventitia. And you see how this muscles change from stratified squamous to, that's the junctions, and it will become simple columnar epithelium. It's in the stomach. How swelling happen, before I go and talk about the stomach and the intestine. Swelling is a reflex that is coordinated by the medulla oblongata, right? And fibers in the vagus and the gastropharyngeal nerves carry information between the gastrointestinal tract and medulla. The nasopharynx close at the same time. Breathing is inhibited during the swallowing. The laryngeal muscles contract to close the glottis and elevate the larynx. Peristaltics begin by creating this pressure, high pressure behind the bolus, which is going to propel the food bolus toward the esophagus distally. At the same time, the upper esophageal sphincter relaxes to permit the food bolus enter the esophagus. All right, and he's coming by this peristalsis until he reach the inferior sphincter, which is relaxed to let it going into the stomach, and the stomach allow the bolus relaxations, because it's a muscle, relax to allow this bolus to enter and mix with the do the next mechanical function and chemical functions of the stomach. So the stomach is a temporary storage tank that store the food. All right, he can store up to 4 liters of. Here, the food is no longer called bolus. We are going to food. It's like a paste lake. It's like a paste now. We call it cane. All right. When empty, it has about 50 milliliters volume, but it can expand to up to 4 liters of cane. And the stomach have some mini fold, those little fold that you see over here. This is what we call rigi of the mucosa. Major parts are the cardia part, that's around the cardial orifice. After that, we have the fundus. It's the area beneath the diaphragm. And we have the body, the mid portion. We have the pyloric part. The pyloric part, we have another region that we call the antrum, that narrow into the pyloric canals. And this into pyloric that terminates into pylorus, and this leads to the duodenum, toward the valve that is or sphincter controlling the stomach emptying. We call it pyloric valve or sphincter, pyloric sphincter. We have also, I forget, those curvatures. We have the greater curvatures, that is lateral surface of the stomach. We have the lesser curvatures. It's a concave medial surface of the stomach. The mesentery extend from curvature and tether the stomach to the other digestive system through those what we call omentum. So we have those greater omentum that drop inferiorly from the greater converters to tether the stomach to the intestine, spleen, and transverse colon. And we have the lesser, it's not showing up over here, that is coming from this from the curvatures, to tether the stomach to the liver. The function of the stomach is to release, protease, pepsinogens, HCLs. He have an antibacterial actions. He even provide, he produce HCLs, and it's so funny, is to provide the acidic pH as low as 2, so the protease can do the work. Produce also gastrin. And this is where the bolus, that we call it in the esophagus, the food, we call it bolus food. Now we call it chyme. And it's to have the chyme produced, it's between 40 minutes and few hours. So let's look at the microscopic anatomy of the stomach. Of course, we have all those layers, the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the serosa. The external, the muscularis has a circular and longitudinal smooth muscle layer. But it's very funny, they have also a third layers here. It's like a modified muscularis externa because of this third layer, because so far we saw only a longitudinal circular, but you have also another one which is oblique, diagonal layer of muscles. Together, those muscles allow the muscle not only to churn, mix, move the chyme, but also to pummel it and increase physical breaking down, which is the mechanical breaking down, and ram it into the intestine. The mucosa, it's also the mucosa. I remember we have the epithelium, lamina propria, and then some muscularis. Mucosa, it's also modified. The epithelium consists of columnar epithelium, entirely composed of mucous cells that secrete a two-layer coat of alkaline mucus, surface layer trap bicarbonate-rich fluid layer that is beneath it. And you have those gastric peats, which lead into gastric gland, and gastric gland produce those gastric juice. Some predictions of the gastric secretions. We have specialized cells for that in those peat gland. We have parietal cells. We find them in the area of the fundus, parts of the stomach. They secrete HCl. They are stimulated by the gastrin, vagal stimulation by the histamine. We have also, we call that principal cells or sheath cells. We find them also the fundus. They produce pepsinogen that convert to pepsin in low pH. And I believe that we will have some slides showing that. And they are under vagal stimulations. And we have those famous G cells that produce gastrin. Gastrin is a hormone that stimulates secretion of the HCl. Look at how it works. the acid of the HCl, because so they stimulate parietal cells to produce HCls. All right, and we don't really know what are the receptors for those gastrin in the parietal cells. And they are produced by the other parts of the stomach that we call the antrum, that is close in the pyloric region of the stomach. And they are stimulated by vagal stimulation or by gastrin releasing peptide, GRP. So let's look at the regulation of the gastric secretion. We have several, three important phases. Let me making it bigger. We have the cephalic phase. The cephalic phase triggered by the smell, the taste, even when you see food, when you think about food. So that's the cephalic phase. The gastric phase lasts 3 to 4 hours and provide the 2/3 of the gastric juice are released after this 3 to 4 hours. How this gastric phase gets stimulated? We have here a stimulatory event and inhibitory event. These tensions activate stretch receptors, including both long reflex via the medulla and vagus nerves and short reflex. It's also stimulated by chemicals such as caffeine, peptide or partially digest protein, low acidity activate the G cells to secrete gastrin. The gastrin then will stimulate the parietal cells and activate enzyme secretions. And also stimulate endocrine cells to release some hormones such as histamine. Low pH will inhibit the gastrin secretions, and this happens between males, during digestions, as how I call when the final products will inhibit its own production. There's a negative feedback mechanism. The more protein, the more HCl acid is secreted, causing a decline in the pH, which is inhibiting the gastrin secretions. We arrive at the last phase, which is the intestinal phase. It's very brief. It's began with the brief stimulatory event, followed by an inhibitions. Stimulatory event is partially digested food enter intestine, causing a brief release of intestinal enteric gastrin. All right, very briefly, which going to encourage actually the stomach to continue secretory activities. As the intestine filled, is going to be filled up, inhibitory event happen. And during this inhibition of the intestinal phase, there are hormone factors that cause it, and actually it happened most of it in the duodenum, that cause the inhibition of the gastric secretion. It's caused by the distensions of the duodenum due to the entry of the chyme on it, presence of the acidic chyme, presence of the thick chyme, and the presence of the hypertonic chyme. This inhibitions event protect from being overwhelmed by too much chyme or too much acidity. And as you can see here, the inhibitions is activated by enterogastric reflex and enterogastron by secretin and CCK. So recapitulations, we have 3 phases of the gastric secretion: cephalic which is, if you can see it, the cephalic is under vagus nerves control. The gastric, if you can see it, is under medulla, under the enteric nerve system, and the most of it's under the gastrin release. And the intestinal part is also nerve system controlling it, because we have this enterogastric reflex and enterogastron reflex. The most important hormones playing a role here are secretin and CCK. Because it's very brief, the stimulatory event. The enterogastric reflex, the duodenum inhibits acid secretions in the stomach by enteric nervous system, short reflexes, sympathetic nerve system, and vague nerve system also, a long reflex via the medulla and the vagus nerves, not only by the enteric nerve system, short one. The enterogastron, the duodenum enteroendocrine cells release two important hormones that I told you, secretin and CCK. Since the muscle is made of this modified externum muscularis, the motility depends on these three layers, the longitudinal, circular, and oblique. And the motility of the stomach is under the enteric plexus, enterogastric reflex, that involve both short and long reflexes, stimulated by the vague and inhibited by the sympathetic nerve system. So let's take it very easy. The ACL and the digestive enzyme secretions, they are secreted in response of the vagal nerves stimulations. The gastrin secretion is stimulated by the stomach distension, small peptide vagal stimulation. This is how the refractory receptive relaxations happen. The emptying of the stomach is stimulated by the isotonicity of the stomach content, inhibited by the acid in the duodenum, the release of CCK, fat, and also by the temperature. We move to the next organ, the small intestine. Very small intestine, we have the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. That's a small intestine. Very essential for the digestions and absorptions. Those temporal and permanent fold of the surface area increase the absorptions. The duodenum is where most chemical digestion takes place, we have those special glands, and this is how we recognize it. Submucosa gland that they secrete bicarbonate mucus, Brunner glands. Not only it's linked to the stomach, but also to the pancreas. When the chyme enters the duodenum and cause the CCK secretion, it stimulates the pancreas to secrete enzymes and the bile release. The secretions will stimulate the pancreas to release bicarbonate into the small intestine. The jejunum is it play a role also. It's one of the first player in the absorptions. The ileum mainly absorbs vitamin B12 and bile, salt, and produce digestion and the products of digestion that were not absorbed by the jejunum. We are going to move to the large intestine. The large intestine is about 1 to 0.5 meter long. It takes about 32 hours to finish up the remaining process of the digestive system. No hydrolysis at this stage. He absorbs certain vitamins created by the bacteria that they are in the colon. Absorbs water and compact feces. It contains the lymphoid, mucous lymphoid associated tissue. So we play an important role in the defense. Lots of goblet cells, and it's responsible for passing solid waste. When it's moving, it creates what we call sac-like segments. When it's contract, we call that haustra, and this happens every 25 minutes. We move to the defecations, how it's happened. Stretchings of the rectum stimulate the enteric effect via the mesenteric plexus. During this time, the muscular contract. The parasympathetic reflex involve spinal cord. We have some receptors in the rectum, and that receive that they are going to send a sensory signal to the spinal cord, those mechanoreceptors. The splanchnic nerves return the signal, and they are going to amplify this movement, this peristalsis movement, the movement of this feces distally. And in the end, this muscularis and the internal sphincter relax. Once you reach the anus, to go out, the external anal sphincter is relaxed, and the abdominal muscles increase this abdominal pressure to let these defecations happen, pushing this pressure behind those undigested food to get eliminated by feces. Now we are going to move to the next organs: livers, gallbladder, and pancreas. Liver are accessory organ associated with the small intestine. Liver digestive function is to produce the bile. Bile, what is it? It's the fat emulsify. Gallbladder is the principal function is to store this fat emulsifier. Pancreas supplies most of the enzyme needed to digest the chyme, as well as bicarbonate to neutralize the acidity of the stomach. So let's get started. The liver. Gross anatomy. We have you can see that it's big organ, right? It can weigh up to 3 pounds. It consists of 4 primary lobes. We have left lobe, right lobe, caudal lobe, quadrilateral lobe. The hepatic artery and vein enter the liver at the portal hepatis. That's the portal hepatis. So we have the hepatic portal vein, hepatic artery. Okay. We have also this bile duct that is connected to the gallbladder. The common hepatic duct leaves the liver. The cystic duct, if the liver, you see it's branched to the cystic duct that is going to connect it to the gallbladder. Microscopic anatomy of the liver, we have those lobules, and we have inside of each lobule, we have this central vein, and they are surrounded by connective tissue. We call that septum connective tissue that connect each lobe with each other. And each little, I'm getting closer over here, this is those little teeny cells that they are inside of the lobule. We call those hepatocytes or liver cells. If you look at the form of those lobules, they are hexagonal form, and they are the functional unit for the liver. They are made of hepatocytes or liver cells that filter and process nutrient-rich blood. And we have the central vein that is localized in the longitudinal axis. In each corner of the lobule contain a branch of hepatic artery which supplies oxygen, branch of hepatic vein which brings nutrient-rich blood from the intestine. And we have also those green things that you are seeing, the bile duct. The bile duct which receive bile from bile canalically, liver sinusids. Remember that the type of capillaries that exist in the liver, they are sinusoidal. They are the Swiss cheese-like capillaries bed. And those bile duct with the vein, portal vein, and the artery vein, they made what we call portal triad for three. So they make the portal triad. Blood from both hepatic portal vein and hepatic artery veins proper from the triad region through the sinusoid and empty into the central vein. And the bile duct receive bile from this little teeny canaliculi. It's so funny that we have this stellate macrophage in this sinusoidal walls, in this and this is to remove debris and all the red blood cells, those macrophages over here. The hepatocytes have increased rough and smooth ER, Golgi apparatus, peroxisomes, and mitochondria. They produce 900 milliliters almost bile per day. They store glucose as glycogen and make plasma proteins, so they process blood-borne nutrient. They store also fat-soluble vitamins, and they perform detoxification. If you see it, we have those stellate macrophage that will also help removing debris and all the red blood cells, but also, the liver perform detoxification. It can convert ammonia into urea. So the function of the liver, it's control blood sugar level via glycogen, since you store glucose as glycogen. All right. Detoxification of the blood by removing and metabolizing poisons like alcohol. Ooh, a lot of smooth ER, and this is what the smooth ER do, detoxifications, if you remember biology 1406, if you ever take it. Store iron, vitamin A, D, E, and K, make the plasma protein, albumin, and fibrinogen, and also make urea because he performed detoxification, so he convert ammonia to urea. Remove bilirubin and break down products from hemoglobin, make lipids, and regulate the blood cholesterol level. A lot of work liver do. Remember that everything go through the liver first to clean it. So he's doing a lot of job to produce this 900 milliliters bile per day. The bile compositions is made of yellow alkaline solutions. They contain bile salts, which is cholesterol derivatives that function in fat emulsifications and absorptions. Bilirubin pigment formed from the hemoglobin. Bacteria break down in the intestine to stercobilin that give brown color of the feces. And then we have the enterohepatic circulations, which a recycling mechanism that conserves bile salt. The bile salts are then reabsorbed into the blood by the ileum, the last part of the small intestine, if you remember, return to the liver via hepatic portal blood, are resecreted as a new form bile. About 95% of secreted bile salts are recycled, so only 5% is newly synthesized each time. Just to making it clear. So let's look at this enterohepatic circulation, the one that will recycle, reabsorb, the bile salt, return it to the liver. Okay, the bile salts first are being secreted right into the duodenum, first part of the small intestine. All right, this is what we got. As the bile salts travel through the small intestine, they allow lipid digestion and absorptions to allow. Arriving at the ileum, the last part of the small intestine, 95% of the bile salts are reabsorbed by the ileum, last part of the small intestine, right? This reabsorbed bile salt is going to be reabsorbed going back to the liver via the hepatic portal vein, where they are recycled all the time, and only 5% of the bile salts are normally sensitized each time. This is what is enterohepatic circulation. Enterohepatic, it's between the intestine and the liver. Now let's look at the bile and the pancreatic secretion into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice contain, it's about 1,200 to 1,500 milliliters a day. It's watery, alkaline, the pH is around 8, because you have to neutralize the chyme coming from the stomach, right? So they have this bicarbonate, secrete electrolytes and digestive enzyme, such as protease, that it's protease to catalyze protein. It's secreted in inactive form to prevent self-digestions, all right? Amylase for starch, for carbohydrate, and lipase for lipids, and also nuclease for nucleic acid. Protease, they are secreted in inactive form. They can be activated once they reach the duodenum. All right, so we have the pancreas is going to secrete all this very nice cocktail. And enteropeptidase too, enzyme that bound the plasma membrane of the duodenum. Epithelial cells, they activate pancreatic protease trypsinogen into trypsin. Once the trypsin is activated, you can activate more trypsin. He activates also chemotrypsinogen to be an active chemotrypsin. And also the procarbopeptidase to activate the carbopeptidase once the trypsin is being released. Regulations of this pancreatic secretions into the duodenum or small intestine. The bile and the pancreatics are both stimulated by neural and hormonal controls. The hormonal controls are secretin and cholecystokinin CCK. The bile secretion is increased when the enterohepatic circulation returns large amounts of bile salt. Remember the circulation between the intestine and the ileum and the liver. Secretin from intestinal cells exposed to ACL and fatty chyme stimulate gallbladder to release bile. Hepatopancreatic sphincter is closed unless digestion is active, so it's not. But if the digestion is not active, it gets closed. And we have a bile stored in the gallbladder and released to small intestine only if contractions happen. So let's look at the mechanism promoting secretion and release of the bile and pancreatic juice. So we have the CCK and secretin that they are secreted by the duodenum enteroendocrine cells. All right, those are two hormones. CCK is released by protein and fat in the chyme, and the secretin is released by the acidity of the chyme. At this point, CCK and secretin are going to enter the circulation and cause pancreatic secretion, bile secretion, gallbladder contractions, and hepatopancreatic relaxations. CCK induce secretion of enzyme-rich pancreatic enzymes, so it stimulates actually the exocrine part of the pancreas. And the secretin causes secretions of the bicarbonate. So the pancreatic juice is becoming rich on bicarbonate and becoming rich on pancreatic enzymes. During this period, I mean the vagus, the nerve vagus, is going to be stimulating very weakly the cephalic and the gastric phase. So he is in the circulation, the bile. Now the bile is rich on the pancreatic enzymes and bicarbonate. And don't forget that cephalic and gastric phases are also weakly stimulated. The bile return from the enterohepatic circulations into the liver. Once in the liver, the CCK will cause the gallbladder to contract, but not only the CCK, but also the vagus that is stimulating, causing cephalic and gastric phases. The gallbladder is also weakly stimulated, contracted over here. The CCK also causes a hepatopancreatic sphincter to relax. And the bile and the pancreatic juice enter the duodenum. What is red is the CCK, which is a little lime over here, that's the secretin. That's the stomach, duodenum, pancreas, liver, gallbladder. Gallbladder is a thin wall, a muscular sac on ventral surface of the liver, as you can see, on ventral surface of the liver. Function is to store and concentrate the bile by absorbing water and ions. It contains so many fold, a lot of fold that allow it to expand when it fills. Muscular contractions release bile via the cystic duct which flow into the bile duct. Bile duct, cystic duct. And that's end our lecture for today. I will see you for the next one. Stay safe and healthy.